Ottawa experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. Even though we've already passed what's known as the bluest day of the year, it generally tends to fall on the third Monday in January, our struggle with mental illness is ongoing. By the time we hit 40, about half of us will have experienced mental illness in some form: postpartum, depression, anxiety, PTSD, schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder. Yet mental illness is still seen as a character flaw or a weakness, and this could not be farther from the truth. Mental illness strikes without warning and without discrimination. It is as insidious as it is invisible. You might never even begin to guess some of the struggles that some of the people you spend the most time with might be going through. Tonight's guests will be talking about how you can optimize your mental health, especially during those long winter months. Are you dealing with bullying in the workplace? Is your house overcome with clutter? Are you finding it increasingly difficult to get out of bed in the morning, especially when other people are depending on you? Here to navigate these issues with you tonight are some very special guests. First, I'd like to introduce to you Parul Shah. Parul has over 20 years of experience in the mental health field. She is a psychotherapist and founder of Embracing Empowerment Counseling Services, and she focuses mainly on frontline personnel who are dealing with PTSD, anxiety, depression, or anyone dealing with trauma. Welcome to the show, Parul.
Thank you, Barbara.
Next, I'd like to introduce Kathy McEwen, who is a certified professional organizer and the owner of Second Set of Hands. It's a home organizing company that provides packing and organizing services for your home and office, and for anyone who is feeling overwhelmed by moving or having too much clutter. There's actually a very direct correlation between clutter and your mental well-being, and Kathy will be speaking more to that later. Thank you for joining us, Kathy.
Thank you for having me.
And Kathy, you've actually also brought in a gift basket for us here. Tell us a little bit about what you're giving away today.
Sure. So the gift basket contains a few drawer organizers, and it also contains a label maker, because I know a lot of people really love to label their boxes and such. And it also includes a 45-minute coaching call with me as well, where they can call me for 45 minutes and pick my brain on organizing ideas.
That's really generous of you. Thank you so much for bringing that in. So if you're interested in winning the gift, you need to go to our Facebook page, Rogers TV Ottawa, Cable Channel 22, and like and comment on the video. Let us know that you're interested in winning the prize, and we'll do a draw and contact the winner later. You just need to be willing to pick up the prize at our offices at 475 Richmond Road. And finally, if you feel like joining the conversation tonight, or you have some questions that you'd like to ask our guests, please feel free to call us at 613-728-1001, 613-728-1001. We're excited to hear from you. Ladies, I'd like to start by hearing a little bit more about your mental health journey. So, Parul, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about what drove you to pursue your line of work as a career path.
Well, I started about 3 years ago, but I have had 20 years experience in mental health. My previous jobs have been Children's Aid Society, frontline, social work, and I've also noticed throughout my career is that we're not taking that time for talks around how does that feel when a child is being apprehended. And throughout the career, when I left that career, I had my own family, and within that moments of having families, I've had also different kinds of struggle. For example, my children were born preemies. Nobody can prepare you with that, and being in the NICU unit for 3 months. I'm married to a cop, a police officer in town, and dealing with understanding what that impacts on them when they're on the front line. So, and my youngest, when she was also born with cerebral palsy. So understanding and trying to figure things out. So with that journey, I felt that struggle. I felt alone a lot. So when I left my child protection services career, I thought I know I had more to help, and I had that expertise. I went back to school, did my master's, graduated, and I thought, you know, it's time for me to branch out, do something on my own. So Embracing Empowerment Counseling Services was born, and I always believe part of my uniqueness of my service is that we owning our story, sharing our story. It's a really basis of a connection between a therapist and a client. A lot of people say, well, why are you sharing your story? You know, is it against the privacy and confidentiality? And I say, well, you're not sharing details, you're sharing a connection. And I think that's where everything started.
Kathy, what's your story?
So I previously used to work in a lot of admin jobs, and before starting Second Set of Hands, I worked for the Ministry of Community and Social Services. I actually worked for ODSP. And
what's ODSP?
Oh, Ontario Disability Support Program.
Okay.
And so when I went to school and got my degree in sociology, my goal was really to try to help people. And then I got to the point where I felt like I could do more. And so I started the business with the goals. I didn't want to do a retail store. I just really wanted it to be a service that was helping people. And I started off actually doing concierge services, which is why Second Set of Hands name came about and not Kathy's Organizing or whatever. And then I included home organization, and I really noticed the need. The calls were really coming for home organization, and people were struggling with having so much clutter. And that's really where my passion was. I just felt that I was making such a big difference in their lives by helping them clear that clutter. And so that's basically how Second Set of Hands came about. And I guess when we're talking about our journey, as we're sharing here today, I think I was probably in my teens when I just noticed that I was doing an awful lot of crying, having a lot of very dark moments. And so for me, it started in my teens, and I think that around my middle 20s is when the doctor decided to prescribe me medication. And for me, that's what helps me, because when you have suicidal thoughts, as I did at that time, the only thing I could do was really get help. And I finally reached out for help, and therapy helps as well. And for me personally, I can only talk about my journey. The medication has helped me a great deal. I can't imagine not being on it for right now. But I've been also, for me, what I struggle with is that if I'm down and I can't do much work, I kind of, that quote where you can't get out of bed. And I find that what I've been doing to cope is actually do the opposite. I will work and work and work. And that's kind of how I came about with Second Set of Hands, is I really wanted to just build a business that was helping other people and at the same time rewarding. I felt so rewarded doing the work as well.
And Kathy, this is a really special moment because you've never really talked about your struggles openly until now.
No, I haven't. My close friends and family members know about it. I don't always share it even with my clients. I just kind of kept it to myself, and I just think it's time. This is a good day today to just say, it's true. It happens to me, and it happens to many other people, and there is help out there, and there's lots of, you can definitely get out of that dark place and be what you want to be, for sure.
Pearl, are you starting to see the stigma lift, or do you think we still have a long way to go?
I think I see a huge lift. I think stigma is about labeling and negative stereotyping. I do see still prevalence of stigma very much in 2019 and 2018, but I think the talks and the conversations have really brought it to the forefront of what that means. But I also noticed that there's a huge transition now when it comes to talks. We're now owning our own story, and owning it makes it reduce that reduction of it.
I was just going to make a comment. I'd love to hear your answer. I find now that social media is so big right now. Years ago, there was no social media, so we kept it to ourselves. I find more people are more open to put it on social media than they are to actually speak about it. I don't think that people would speak about it as much if they didn't have the computer in front of them and just let it out. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think there's a creative sense of writing. I write a lot of things on social media about mental health, about mental wellness, but I think it is a platform, right? So it gives that voice to everybody who feels, you know, I don't know how to say it, but I can write it.
Yeah.
And it's probably easier to have that sort of confession when you're not directly in front of the person, or maybe you're not directly in front of your family member or your friend who you feel might judge you. Did you worry about being judged, Kathy?
Definitely. I definitely worried about being judged. You know, years ago, people would say that you're crazy, or, you know, some people might be thought of as being lazy if they're just in bed and not being able to get out. So, yeah, I was definitely afraid to bring it to the forefront, for sure.
And there's also stigma around taking medication, is there not?
Yes, there is. Definitely a lot of people that have that stereotypical view of mental health is like, that's an easy way out.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you doing that? You know,
why don't you just get over it?
Get over it, or snap out of it, you know. But I think the combination, as what Kathy had stated in her intro, is that a combination of medication and therapy is definitely an asset for recovery and growth in our mental health. And I think the more we start talking, even just the combo of it, I think it would increase that feel of, you know, consensus, I'm not alone in this.
And Pearl, you're very open about your own family struggles and your daughters as well. You're very open about that. What has given you the confidence to speak so openly?
It's because being a parent and seeing the actual struggles out there, I mean, I'm dating myself, but when I was in high school, stigma of mental health was definitely prevalent, but it was never talked about. It was shut to the door. And I think having two teens having that experience of anxiety and the extreme bullying, it made me feel like I need to be their voice now. And placing that voice and advocacy is such an important piece of being a parent.
I want to hear more about that, and also some of your tips for home organizing when we come back from the break. Please don't go away. We'll be right here.
The following program is brought to you by Rogers Anyplace TV. Enjoy exclusive content for free. Visit RogersAnyplaceTV.com.
The sun goes down in Pasadena and I feel alive. I feel like I'm dreaming, and the sun comes up and I'm still sleeping and alone.
My wife doesn't write, thank God.
Don't walk away from me, damn it! I can't do it anymore. I can't take it. I can't take the humiliation.
Joan, we're not bad people.
You have a madman on your hands.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I risked my men. I risked my ship.
All ahead flank.
Brace for impact!
Hi, I'm Jennifer Anderson.
And I'm Allison Schaefer.
And we are the hosts of The Parenting Show.
How great that Rogers has a TV show where we can address all the common parenting issues.
It's all the issues that you face and to let you know that you are not alone.
And I can offer you some great expert advice. Things like picky eating, how to get your kids to sleep, dealing with those blowouts at homework time.
All those things and more right here on Rogers TV.
Uninterrupted speeches from Canada's business leaders, visionaries, and social figures. Watch Podium Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. We're talking with guests Parul Shah and Kathy McEwen tonight about organizing and optimizing your mental health during the winter blues. Often we fail to understand that what seems like not a big deal to us can be actually a source of great terror or anxiety to someone else who's coping with a mental health issue. I remember when Anthony Bourdain took his life earlier in the summer, there was a lot of confusion around that. Like, the guy had a dream job, he was traveling the world, wining and dining, you know, how could things possibly have gone so badly for him? But I also remember reading an interview where he spoke of sometimes something as simple as having a really bad hamburger would be enough to send him into a spiral of depression, and that's something that we might not necessarily understand. And I wanted to ask both of you what your experiences have been with some common myths and misconceptions surrounding mental illness and depression. Parul, what are some of the most common myths that you come across in your practice?
Depression itself, you're supposed to be looking like sadness, sitting in a corner, not talking to anybody, isolation. But as Anthony Bourdain, he was very active in you know, in his cooking, his expertise.
He's
and
extremely high
traveling.
functional,
Yeah.
and there's an increasing group of people out there that are high functioning with depression.
Yes, and so he and Kate Spade have really, despite what their tragedies have been, they actually showed our society that depression isn't just crying and being upset or sitting in a corner or being lonely and not able to get up. It's also smiling, right? So there's a different forms of that and hidden mask. And I always talk to my clients about, you know, what mask are you wearing today? Oh, I'm wearing a happy mask. So how are you really feeling? Well, I feel really deep sadness. I feel completely lost. And we're talking like high functional frontline workers, teachers, professors, ECE workers. I see it in all, you know, careers that depression is very prominent in everybody's life. So again, as you said in the beginning in the intro, mental health does not discriminate.
We have a caller on the line. Emily, are you there?
Hi.
Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for calling in tonight. Did you have a question for our guests?
Yeah, I wondered if you had any beginner tips for someone who just kind of can get into little funks or down like moods, and if they know they're in kind of a cluttered space and they want to organize and clean it up, but it's hard to get to that point. I was wondering if you had any tips for kind of making small changes.
That sounds like a question for you, Kathy.
Yeah, and it's a really good question. And I think what some of the problems is that people will look at their whole house as being cluttered and they're overwhelmed about with how much they have to go to clear up. So I always suggest that, you know, take a deep breath, think about a goal you'd like to achieve that day, write it down, and it be small. Just a small one. Even if it's like, today I'm going to try to clear out my kitchen counter and put everything away. That's it. Like, if I don't want you to think that you got to clear out your whole house and tidy the whole house up. It's just too overwhelming. And if you're in that funk and you're not feeling well and you don't have much energy, then you're not going to be able to do the whole house. So don't worry about it. Just focus on one small task and see if you can get that one task done. That's what I would suggest. And then when that task is done, take a break. And if you feel like it, try another one or wait till tomorrow. But at least it's something.
So the idea is that you look at that cleared space and you feel good about it and it motivates you to keep going.
Going to somewhere else, yeah. Baby steps.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us, Emily.
Thank you.
Let's talk about anxiety, Parul. What is anxiety? How does it manifest itself? And how do you know that it's a problem?
So anxiety could be looking like very nervousness, right? Trembling, feeling like you're about to get sick, rumbling in your stomach, heart palpitations, sweatiness. But anxiety is a little bit more than that. It goes into the thought process. How are we feeling? What are we doing? The potentials of danger is what anxiety takes us on. I know that for my oldest daughter, her anxiety was so bad around different things, and I didn't realize at that time too, like it's not just an anxiety in general. I mean, clients of mine have been diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, but it is so hard to, you know, figure things out unless you have a conversation with them. And I think that's where we need to understand that even no matter what kind of diagnosis you have, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic, is understanding what that diagnosis is. I often say to clients, okay, so you got diagnosed, let's put that aside. Now let's understand how you got here. And I think understanding that piece and taking that time to listen to somebody, it's important to understand how they feel, because not everybody is the same way. Not everybody's anxiety is the same situation.
So you mean like the root cause for their anxiety?
Yes.
And what are some typical root causes?
You know, some things like failures in marriages, careers, being a child and not getting accolades or reassurance and affirmations. Bullying is also a big factor for anxiety as well. So there is definitely different factors of everything. It depends on the person itself. So for example, I'll give you an example from my daughter, her feel of failure, right? So you're going to do an exam or test, feeling, you know, I'm going to fail, that's it, I'm done. I want to excel and to go into university. So her anxiety is around the future.
But isn't a little bit of that normal, or maybe even helpful?
No, there's definitely, I'm glad you brought that up, because this generation feels that anxiety, oh, I need medication right now, let's solve this.
Yeah.
But there is good anxiety, right? Like, for example, when we come on air, we all have that little butterfly feeling.
Sure, even I do.
Yeah. So that's a good anxiety piece. So teaching that piece, teaching those things, I think we need to really talk about what's the good anxiety, what's the bad anxiety. When it's bad anxiety, we need help. And how can we attain that help?
It could be something as simple as, like, I remember having an anxiety attack when I was actually at my doctor's office, and I was just sitting there waiting, and I had left work, and I said to my boss, I'll be back in about an hour. Well, I sat there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and now I'm worried about getting in trouble at work. So that what brought on an anxiety attack for me, because I was just worrying about it, and next thing I know, I had an anxiety attack.
What does an anxiety attack look like?
It's a feeling where I start with a tightness in the chest, and then, you know, I have a hard time breathing, but really, I think we're breathing in too much air.
Yeah.
And it feels like you can't breathe. And then sometimes there's tinglings in your hands as well, right? The tinglings in the fingers.
Physical manifestation of symptoms.
Yeah. And it's, and I had a family member, this happened to him for the first time just this week. He was visiting his brother, who was in the hospital, and was told really bad news, and then next thing you know, he ended up having one, and it was his first ever having one. But I think the trauma for hearing the bad news kind of just set him over the edge a bit, and he had a hard time breathing as well. And it's a terrible feeling. It really is. It's a terrible feeling, because you just don't know, like,
you don't know what's going on. You don't know what's happening to you.
And it debilitates someone. You know, for example, July 1st, and we're out in my hometown, and my daughter, you know, has her coping skills, and then all of a sudden, she stood frozen and shaking and couldn't talk. And my parents were flabbergasted, didn't know what was going on. They knew that she had anxiety, but didn't really know how bad. And she couldn't even explain herself. And it took her about 4 or 5 hours to come down from it. So there is a difference between good anxiety, acute anxiety, you know, extreme anxiety, and then you have your panic attacks. Like as Kathy said, when you're feeling, you know, tingly and stuff, it's almost a mimic of a heart attack.
You think you're going to die?
Yeah.
You brought us a coping box.
Yes, I did.
Let's have a look. What's inside?
So this coping box, I often give it to my clients. I actually gave it to my kids as well. And it's around anything with triggers that you may have, anxiety, you're feeling sad and you want an uplift. So it's any form of box. So this is not a really new idea, but I did bring it in the uniqueness in Ottawa area. And it could come in different forms, shape, and size. It comes plain. And why I provide that plain box is we need to start use our creativity. And so you could design it. I have had teens, youth, and adults design how they feel, quotes they want. I had one client who did a really amazing anime art on it. And inside, they could put anything in there. So stress balls, different kind of stress balls. This one lights up when you squeeze it.
And would you squeeze it when you feel an attack coming on?
Or just before. So when I know that a client is feeling anxious of even talking, you know, you don't know that person. So you're about to talk about your own personal life to a stranger. So I provide that for them while they're talking. And once they start squeezing it, that talk just comes at ease. So it's an automatic kind of release without even noticing it. So you could put notepads in there, pens. I've even had clients write poems in there and reread it.
You have a slinky in there.
Yes, I do. So, I mean, these slinkies are not just a children's toy. I've had a frontline worker play with a slinky while we were talking. So, and it just calmed him down completely. Yeah. So again, this is a universal thing, but it's also uniqueness in the box. So I provide some tools for my clients, but I say add what makes you feel calm, happy, joyful, even if in that little moments.
And the idea is that you bring the box around with you?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So my girls have 3 boxes, one at home, one in their backpacks, and one at school. And I often tell parents that if their children are displaying anxiety, to talk to the teachers about individual educational plan and add that on. So that, you know, put that in there, and it could go in different forms. Like you could have a little fidget in a box, right? So having that ability and control is what, you know, feeling that control that you have that power to do that.
We're just about to go to break, but I want to remind you, if you want to win this fantastic gift basket by Kathy McEwen, don't forget to like and comment on our Facebook page. We'll be right back after the break.
Are you the type who would keep going or stop? It's not easy to stop when you have an addiction. Legalizing cannabis won't stop addiction. It trivializes its consumption. Let's be vigilant. If you need help, visit portage.ca.
Family, it's just extremely important. People move around. Connected for Success has just made it so much easier. For the longest time, I was on cloud 9. It connects you to family. It connects you to the outside world, and it makes you feel connected to the community. It was a whole new experience. You realize then how much you missed out. In fact, connect is my favorite word now. I love that word. It keeps me out of trouble.
Two of the best in the world. That's an amazing fight. The middleweight championship, the greatest of all time. This kid is a superstar. It's going to be fireworks.
Hi, I'm Aaron Beach, and I'm a volunteer here at Rogers TV. I've been a volunteer here at Rogers TV for 6 years. I work on Daytime Ottawa, Ottawa Today, Ottawa Experts, and Cultural Window. One of the reasons I like volunteering here at Rogers TV is because I get hands-on experience with a lot of the great new technologies that I love. I'd recommend anyone to volunteer here if they're interested in getting into the TV field.
Each week on Real Talk with Sarah, I'm joined by experts in the field of wellness who share their expertise and guide us to optimal health of mind, body, and soul. Join me Sundays at 8 p.m. for Real Talk with Sarah on Rogers TV.
to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. We're talking in the studio tonight with Kathy McEwen from Second Set of Hands on the link between the clutter in your physical environment and the clutter inside your mind and your life. Kathy, tell me a little bit about the link between those two. What is the correlation between having a really great organized home and having optimal mental health?
It's huge. It really is. So if you have a lot of clutter in your space, then you usually feel anxiety, you often feel overwhelmed, and it also brings on mind clutter as well. So if you can have a clear space and have your living environment feeling peaceful and calm when you walk in, that makes a big difference on your mental well-being for sure.
And it's really trendy to talk about that right now with Marie Kondo and this whole movement about, saying goodbye and thanking each one of your items before you throw it away. But that's not really relevant to a North American lifestyle, is it?
It really isn't. I mean, I think that what's really wonderful is that she's bringing awareness that there's help out there, which is wonderful. And she's cute as a button as well. She really is. But I think that her method is a little different than most of the professional organizers that I know of, in the fact that she often will take everything and put it into a big pile. For example, if she does clothes, she gets clothes from all areas of the house, puts it all into one room, and it's a stack of a mile high. And then I believe she leaves. She gives them the tools, like suggestions on how to do it, and leaves. But if I did that with my clients, they would have been overwhelmed with this big part.
I would have left too.
Yeah. So I think that method works really well if you're in a smaller condo maybe, and it's just a small room and you don't have a lot of stuff. But for our North American families where we have big homes and a lot of people living in the homes, it's just too much. And then her method of thanking everything, I think is a wonderful idea, and it's kind of like spiritual to let those go. But we sometimes will do a session in 4 hours and we probably let go of 300 things, right? So if they said, goodbye to their pen, we would be all day saying thank you to the pen. So it's not something we do, but so it's a little different. But she's got some great tips as well, and she's helping a lot of people, and it's motivating because I've heard that the donation centers now are getting flooded with even more donations because people are hopping on the bandwagon and letting go of stuff.
There's really something to be said about a cleanse, a sort of a detox of your possessions. I sometimes feel as energized as I would after like a 3-kilometer run. Like it's crazy, the endorphins are going. And I want to get into it, but we have a caller on the line. Are you there with us, Andrea?
Yes, I am.
Thanks so much for calling in. Did you have a question for our guest?
I do. I was wondering about if you had any tips regarding when you do get yourself sort of organized, decluttered, do you have any tips to help the family and, say, husband or children to stay on board with this new kind of a lifestyle?
Yeah, that's another good question. My suggestion is when you're getting organized is to put systems in place where it's easier for the family to follow. So it's really important to have a system that they can all follow and teach them how to follow it. And like one of the things that I brought here is can I just show this here?
Yes, of course.
This here is this here is labeling. So if you
brought in a container there, okay, it says breakfast on the front.
Yeah, so it's just like if you use any kind of containers like this, for example, in your kitchen pantry, if you have it labeled, they're more likely to put it back because they'll know where it goes. Now, some people don't because they just kind of get in a hurry, and it's really, what it is we got to change their habits. So they have a habit of just throwing things into the pantry. But if we have these systems labeled, then we hope that they will follow it. It's easier for them because keeping it organized, I know, is not always easy for some people, but it's really about changing your habits and teaching them that, you know what, we got to, every day, 20 minutes, you got to tidy up. Like tell your children, 20 minutes before you go to bed, it's our tidy up time, and you teach them to tidy up.
But what if your husband is your children?
They're the hardest.
Old dogs, new tricks, right?
Yeah. They are the hardest.
But you brought in a few other items to show us too, to make our life simpler. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrea.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this here little gadget, so if you have a small space and you have you know, quite a few things on your hangers in your closet, then having a little gadget like this helps, because you just put it right onto the hanger, and then you can put your shirt on there, and then you can put another piece. Sometimes you want to put, I don't know, scarves on it, whatever may match, or another shirt.
Okay, so like you might have like your blouse on one and then the matching pants to go with that.
Which saves you time.
When you're getting ready in the morning.
You just grab your outfit and it's all there, which is nice. So that little gadget too, they're not expensive either. They're really handy.
And you know, the funny thing is these sound so simple, yet it's the simple things that make the biggest difference.
Yeah, it's true. There's all these little tips that you can use that are simple but work.
And what else have you got there?
Well, these here are drawer organizers, and everyone has one of those kitchen drawers where they're full of stuff, right? That junk drawer. So I tend to use these in a lot of the clients' homes, just so that way when they shut the drawer, they're not flying all over the place, and it keeps it containerized, is what I call it. And it's also good in a desk drawer as well, so those are really handy for that.
And then you've got something wrapped there.
Oh yeah, this is a little gadget here. So this is a good time, because I find a lot of people are traveling right now. And so this is a little travel organizer, and it folds up really compact, and then it opens up, and you can actually put quite a bit of stuff inside these. You know, your toiletries, your toothbrushes, or whatever you want to put
So you basically pack that ahead of time, throw it in your suitcase, and
throw it in.
Yeah.
And then it's easy, because it just wraps right up into a small container. It doesn't take up as much room in your suitcase.
And speaking of traveling and the Caribbean island that I wish I was on right now.
Me too.
For those of us for whom that getaway might not be an option, and we're struggling with seasonal affective disorder this time of year, you know, those winter blahs, those days that just don't seem to end. Parole, what does that look like for people? How do you know you have a problem, and what are some tips that you offer your clients?
So SAD is what they often call it, right? So seasonal affective disorder, and it is, you know, a time where there's coldness, there's not a lot of natural sunlight. It's hard to kind of figure out how am I feeling? Is this anxiety? Is this you know, sad talking? But it is also effect of, you know, the mood. It takes the effect of mood. So people who have come to me is, you know, I'm kind of feeling this way. I'm not feeling depressed, but all of a sudden I'm not feeling myself. And we're looking at, you know, early sets of September it goes right till close to March. And we talk about, you know, what's the feeling of change of our bodies, our environment, our living arrangements, but also the fact of what's out there in the environment. Because I know for a fact that when the barometric pressure goes up and down, I'll get a migraine headache. So environment does affect our mental health as well. So there are a few things that we can talk about how we can help ourselves through, you know, sad months. And
now, if you live in Vancouver, for instance, where it's raining all the time, how does the definition of sad change?
It doesn't really, but because, I mean, 2 to 3% of Canadians have SAD throughout the year. And that
I see some of the symptoms there: fatigue, loss of interest, feeling of hopelessness, sadness, and change of sleeping patterns.
Yeah, so any of that. But a lot of people say, well, that's a generic term, right? That could go for depression as well. But I think, you know, as you said in Vancouver, you know, where it's kind of raining, there is that 2 to 3%. 15% of Canadians throughout their lifetime will have seasonal affective disorder. And light therapy has worked. So
That's what I was just going to ask you.
So it could be from on the desk, it could be on your bed, it could be a long standing. Now these days they are very fancy. They can actually look like a ball, like a crystal ball.
Oh, wow.
And it goes with your mood, and it'll actually increase the lightness. Meanwhile, it'll have like soft, soothing songs going on, aroma.
So it's not just the light anymore.
No, it's everything,
it's all the
and it's all the sense. Yeah, exactly.
Where can you buy these?
So I know that Indigo has placed it on their website as well. Amazon, you could go on Amazon. You could go even to HomeSense.
Okay.
But it comes comes in different forms. I know from my daughter, she doesn't have seasonal affective disorder, but she loves the light. It calms her down. So it actually brings people in a little bit, and I think that's what light therapy does for people who are suffering from SAD. And the other piece is seeking help, asking, you know, self-help books. Those are pretty predominant. And women are the ones who are pretty, you know, at high risk for SAD, right? So because especially when we're, you know, going to work and then rushing to go home and either have a dinner with our spouse or partner or our kids and then running to somewhere else, there's no outdoor time.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. So we have a caller on the line. Julie, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you so much for joining us. Did you have a question?
I was curious, like, what kind of smells could I, like, diffuse in my diffuser to kind of, like ease the anxiety and help with stress and stuff like that?
That's a great question.
That is a great question. So lavender, spearmint, and chamomile. And there is a different one, but it's different companies. Like they call it, I forget how you call it, it's frankincense. It has that orangey smell to it. I often diffuse vanilla lavender in my office so that when somebody, and my lights are dim, but they're actually, it makes people calmer. So when you walk in, there's a little bit of fragrance, not overwhelming. I love Bath and Body Works, but you know, sometimes it could be very overwhelming. So, you know, just 1 or 2 drops in water, even on the stove. If you don't have a specific diffuser, you could put it on the stove with lots of water, 2-3 drops, and let that go for a little bit, for maybe a half hour on full boil, and you'll smell that throughout the house.
We have 1 minute left before we go to break. Kathy, did you have any tips to add to that?
I don't know much about the oils that are out there, but I could just say that I like to have vanilla, so I tend to use vanilla. I think that I agree with you that if it's too smelly and it's very bright, like
it can get annoying.
Yeah. But it's not going to give you the calming effect. It might give you the hyper effect, if anything, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for calling in, Julie.
Thank you.
We're about to go to break soon, but when we come back, I'd like to hear a little bit more about workplace bullying and also the cultural aspect of mental health, whether mental health is culturally informed for the various groups of people that might be impacted. So please don't go away. When we come back, there'll be a lot more about mental health, and give us a call, 613-728-1001 if you have any questions. We'll be right back.
Trailing the Blue Nose.
Angus should never have agreed to this last race. She's too old.
Eddie! Coming in there! The cops are hell, you're back! Get to it, man! Appears there's some kind of difficulty. The console's foul!
Just once more, old girl, and you can rest.
Her last race and still undefeated. The Blue Nose out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia was fastest in the world for almost 20 years.
It was John's graduation. We were so proud. We all got together for a picnic. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and we listened. It helped us get to safety. That's why when I think of John, because now he has a real future to look forward to.
I'm author-speaker Kathy Donovan. Join me for television that's good for your body, mind, spirit, and business. It's Refresh Your Passion here on Rogers TV.
Celebrate Ottawa is a collection of stories for, by, and about the people, places, and rich history that make Ottawa such a vibrant place to call home. Tune in Sunday evenings at 7:30.
Welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour, and tonight we're speaking about mental health and how to optimize it during those winter months. We're in the studio with guests Parul Shah and Kathy McEwen, and we were chatting earlier before we went to break about clutter and the psychological implications of clutter. Can you speak to that a little bit more, Kathy, in terms of what you see with your clients, what you've noticed over the years?
Sure. So what I'm noticing is that the longer they're suffering from this depression, the more their house is getting full of clutter. And then they're just feeling so overwhelmed they can't do any of it. And they can't get up. And it's overwhelming. And so nothing gets done. It's like sometimes I'll go into a home where it's so full of clutter, and also it can be dirty because if they have a lot of clutter, it's a lot harder to clean.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of when I go in and help them, my goal is to really try to get the house remove some of the items because they usually have too much and to create a spatial environment for them. But I do find that a lot of times they like to talk about, they're embarrassed, and so they'll try to explain why they're in that state. And so a lot of times they'll get to a point where they're kind of telling me some of their secrets per se that they wouldn't tell anybody else. And that's when I usually say to them that I'm there to help them declutter, but I'm also not a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I would give a list of therapist names to help them if they wanted to go that route.
Interesting that you would need to carry that around with you as a list of resources. But
Yes.
I mean, I think that the act of decluttering can be so therapeutic in of itself.
Well, I can tell you that I once had a client who was decluttering, and I spent a year with her, and I thought she was doing very well because her whole house became so much better. It was a lot less clutter. And unfortunately, this particular person committed suicide.
Oh.
So it's like...
Your client committed suicide.
Yes, yeah. So for her situation is that I thought she was doing so much better.
Wow.
Because she kept thanking me, I have my house back. But that's not the answer, really. If they have psychological problems or depression or anything like that, they have to still get to the root of that.
Yeah,
right?
it's almost like the decluttering becomes a Band-Aid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in hers, that's her situation, but that's not necessarily everyone's situation, right? So like some people will feel so much better when their house is in order, but then, there may not be suicidal, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that, Parul?
There is definitely a correlation to cluttering, hoarding, to psychological, but it goes way beyond depression. It actually goes more on the childhood trauma and filling in the gaps in your heart and trying to figure out, I'm missing, an uncle, or I lost a child. How do I kind of mend that? And it's too much. I mean, I've come through with my husband's side of the family. His mother was a person of hoarding, and it became so bad that even she had someone come in and help her declutter, and she was so like, don't touch my stuff. She would even get angry if we moved things over here and there. So decluttering is great. But we have to get, as Kathy said, we have to kind of get to the root.
Mm-hmm.
What is this doing to us? What is it doing to me? What does this piece of paper mean to me? What does this magazine mean to me? What does this ball of yarns?
A lot of times that they've had trauma in their life. And one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of too is that if they didn't have a lot of items growing up, now they have so many items. They're making up for what they didn't have as a child, or especially when it comes to toys. Like I've had some clients where they didn't have a lot of toys growing up, so now their kids have every toy you can imagine.
And then you get comfortable with it because it becomes a safe zone.
Yeah.
It becomes a safety net. And when they start seeing the declutter happen, it's almost overwhelming emotionally. So they become, the anxiety starts increasing, the depression starts, spiraling down, and it's a vicious cycle. So I often tell my clients, I also refer them to someone professional, but they have to have a psychological aspect of it, especially when it's so much other, like clutter. And they go in, they do a course, they go in, the professional goes in, and they say, okay, what brings you to this place? What's your thoughts in this place? What got you to this place? They're not looking at the whole environment, because that in itself is way overwhelming for the homeowner. So going just for certain areas at a time, and it could, as Kathy said, it could take 8 months to a year to stay with that client, to do a portion. So saying thank you and goodbye to, I mean,
that's really cute.
It's really cute. It's a great concept, but it's not realistic.
And plus, I think she says, let go of everything that doesn't bring you joy, which is very good concept, but a lot of these people, it all brings them joy, right?
Yeah, or things that you need don't bring you joy. You know? We didn't really have a chance to touch on this, but I wanted to touch on this a little bit before the end of our show tonight, Parul, is how do race and culture serve as barriers to accessing mental health?
There's a huge barrier. And I think besides the obvious, the language, I think it comes with tradition. Right, so you come, first generation, come from different areas of different countries and come to Canada because they feel that this is a beautiful, diversified country, which we are. And then you have children who are born and raised here in Canada, and their kids are starting to grow and have different views. So when it comes to mental health, for example, I've had a client who's absolutely petrified that her parents would find out that she went to see a therapist to deal with some of her extreme anxiety.
What was she afraid would happen?
Disownment.
Wow, that extreme.
Yeah, disownment. Within the really cultural communities, disownment, why are you telling our personal problems? It's only for the family. So there is definitely a huge barrier between that.
I see we have a caller on the line. Are you there?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining us. Did you have a question for our guests?
I do. I live in something that could be considered a small home. And most of the time, when the weather is nicer, I'm outside. But now that the weather is colder, I'm inside. And I need to find a way to declutter, but have it, because I don't have a lot of storage, out in the open, but it looks nice. So it doesn't bother me as much. So when I do have time to go outside, it's better.
Yeah, so when people live in a small home, they often have too much stuff for this space. That's what it really comes down to. So what I would probably do is go over and assess the situation and see if there's anything that could maybe be let go. If not, maybe better organizing systems in place to, there's ways you can, if you have proper storage shelving, or I know he mentioned he didn't have a lot of storage, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But there's sometimes ways we can get around that by creating better systems in place, but sometimes it's a matter of too much for the space.
Did you have any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay.
I wanted to go back to the culture piece. How would you suggest a young person who's maybe a first-generation Canadian broach the subject with her immigrant parents? Or are there certain instances where you wouldn't recommend that at all?
So I often recommend, I always believe in lines of communication open. Even if it's hard for the person coming in for therapy and engaging and bringing in family into the therapy session, I think it's important to have a conversation. So I've had that many times with clients from different cultures where they're having an issue of being able to even advise their own parents saying, I have anxiety, and there's no such thing in anxiety, and especially in traditional cultural issues. It's like, no, you deal with it, you kind of move forward,
You're being weak.
Yes, but they don't say weak. They say, kind of, this is how we're supposed to be. We're brought up this way, you're supposed to deal with it. Just kind of move on, you know, you're just being this way because of the Canadian values. So those words are being brought up in front of them when they're saying, well, I am Canadian. So I have had parents come in and I just have basic talk, and basic talk is asking them and respecting their culture. So I want them to educate me first. So making them feel empowered that, oh, this person really wants to know my culture, giving them that empowerment and saying, this is our values, this is how I have been raised, this is how I've been raising my children, but I don't like this way. So then I allow the child, the teen, the youth, even the adults speak up and saying, no, this is how I'm feeling. So it comes down to compromise.
And courage.
And yes.
A lot of courage.
Definitely a lot of courage. And I've seen good things happen and I've seen not so great things happen. But I think the conversation is definitely needed to bring it open into a safe environment.
Interesting.
Kathy, how did you feel growing up? Were you able to talk with your family about what you were going through?
I never did.
Okay.
I never did. I kept everything inside.
And
yeah.
Do you feel like...
I didn't actually even go on medication until I was an adult. So, and I went to the doctor myself. I don't even think I told my parents at that time that I was on medication. They know I am now.
And
but
how did they react?
Well, they were fine about it.
Yeah.
And you know, what's interesting is that I found out is that it's actually running in my family.
Wow.
It's a history of it.
And no one ever talked about it?
No. No, it was not something we really talked about, but I'm noticing it, you know, now that other family members that are very close family members are also on medication now as well and needing support and help. So I'm not alone.
Yeah, you never are.
No.
We have just a couple minutes left till the end of our time together, but I know, Kathy, you have some events coming up that you wanted to talk about.
I actually have a couple of things. So right now I have, if you're interested in joining a declutter challenge, it's called Let It Go Challenge. It's already started. It's in my Facebook group, Organize for Success, but it's never too late to hop in, and people are being so supportive. They're, you know, saying, okay, I'm going to do this, and I have a video for them to watch and learn from. There's also there's the in April, the Child Expo as well. I'll be there, which I'm looking forward to as well.
Fantastic. And Parul, where can we find you?
On Facebook, on Instagram, Embracing Paramount Counseling Services, Parul.ShawOfficial on Instagram. And I just want to plug in April 3rd. I've been so honored to be under Silken Laman, our 4-time Canadian champion, Olympic champion, to share my story on a national online platform. So
where can we find that?
She has a new Facebook page called Unsinkable.
Okay.
Unsinkable Stories.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us both and sharing your expertise.
Thank you.
Don't forget to like and comment on our Facebook page to win our gift basket donated by Kathy McEwen. We'll see you in the studio next week. Have a great night.